My name is Lynn Mazer, and my story goes back nearly 12 years. And it was 12 years ago that I became ill. And it was really quite normal. It was just a cold. Just started with a cold. There were no crazy symptoms or anything unusual, except I didn't often get colds. At that time, I was 29 years old. I worked for an international organization. I taught high-impact aerobics 3 times a week. I practiced yoga once a week, and I walked 20 miles a week. So I was a real exercise fanatic. I was very fit, and at that time, everyone thought I had a very healthy diet. My diet consisted of a breakfast was usually a bran muffin, decaf coffee, and some fruit. Lunch was yogurt and cheese, maybe some crackers, and dinner was often pasta and maybe some bread, maybe a few vegetables. So it seemed a very healthy diet at the time. However, this cold that I got, just rolled into another cold, and then bizarre kinds of infections. And after about a month of this, I went to the doctor, and they weren't sure, and tried some antibiotics. And what happened was I went for 18 months, becoming continually more ill, and no diagnosis at all possible, and sent from specialist to specialist. And I had been, as I said, working for an international organization. I had traveled in a number of third world countries. Some of my primary symptoms were fever of unknown origin. And it was believed that maybe I had a rare infectious disease or that I had contracted malaria. None of those things proved to be true. And after 13 months, I eventually did have a diagnosis. And that diagnosis was Hodgkin's disease, lymphoma. And I was diagnosed as stage 4B, which is the most extreme condition you can have. It means that it is entirely throughout your body. I was given less than a 38% chance of survival, and in some test procedures with my oncologist, I exhibited a reaction to some of the chemo drugs. So they were not even entirely sure I would survive the chemo. They thought that my body would reject that and that it might kill me. I wasn't anxious to go into this treatment that was sounding like it could be very problematic. And yet they also believed if I didn't start treatment immediately, I could be dead in a matter of weeks. At this time, as I said, I'd been sick for 13 months. I would experience fevers of over 104 for as much as 8 days straight without them ever breaking, and I would be delirious, and it was really, I really was a very ill person. And I had experienced dreams that led me to believe that, that I was really quite sick. So I searched for other alternatives, and at that time, in '89, I did not find anything that seemed to work for me, and I didn't find anything that I felt I could cope with or understand. So I began the conventional treatment, and I did 8 cycles of MOP-ABV chemo. That regime has now been reduced dramatically, but at that time it was 7 chemotherapy drugs. Because I was extremely physically fit, the first time they injected the drugs, the chemo drugs, I tolerated the drugs very well. They figured out the amount of the drugs that would technically kill you, and then they back off a certain percentage, and then that's what you're injected with. And they figured that for me, because I tolerated it so well, they increased it. So I was receiving chemotherapy drugs that were at a rate of 125% of what should kill me. At the end of 8 cycles of chemotherapy, I was not in really good shape. However, the cancer was believed to be in remission, but they still had a number of questionable areas, and they wanted me to move on to radiation. What had happened was that I had finished the chemotherapy regime, And those chemotherapy drugs tend to suppress the immune system. And when people are removed from those drugs, normally the immune system stays suppressed. And only after many years does it gradually improve to some levels. My immune system returned with a vengeance. And it basically said, oh my gosh, there's all kinds of damage, and it kind of went into overdrive. And what happened was, when I came off the chemotherapy drugs, in 10 days I gained 11 pounds. And I became very stiff. And what was happening was my body was having a reaction to all the drugs in my system. And basically I was having a collagen vascular disease that was a result of the drug bleomycin that I was on. And my doctors had never seen this disease, and they did a search to the medical literature, and they could find only two recorded cases at that time of this disease. Those two cases were men. Both had been issued an experimental drug, and both had died. They wanted to give me the experimental drug. I didn't think it was a good experiment, and I wasn't interested in participating. And I just thought, this is crazy. Now my body is killing me, and it is reacting to all these drugs, and they are telling me that these drugs, the levels of chemotherapy I took, the drugs would be detectable in my body for up to a year after stopping chemotherapy. And so I decided that what I needed was fewer drugs, and I could not take the experimental therapy, and I needed to get things out of my body as quickly as possible. I needed to get these drugs out of my body. So I began a search then, and that's when I encountered macrobiotics. And I started first with a homeopath and naturopath that started me on a whole grain diet, and started increasing a lot of vegetables in my diet, reducing fruit, eliminating dairy. And then each of these practitioners wanted me to take certain remedies or supplements, and I just couldn't take any more pills, and I didn't think that was what I was needed. I intuitively felt I needed only natural things, and even if it was natural pills, it seemed not right, and I needed to keep moving and find something. And I found Michio Kakushi's book, The Cancer Prevention Diet, and I knew that was what was going to work. And I read, he had descriptions in there of my exact disease, of the Hodgkin's, and what a diet would, the type of diet that would cause Hodgkin's, and it all matched up. And I started working with those solutions. And within 10 days on the macrobiotic diet, my blood levels changed for the first time in several months in a positive direction. Within 30 days, this rare drug-induced disease that was supposed to kill me. I was given less than 2 months to live with this drug-induced disease that they had no cure for. Within 30 days, that had begun to reverse. And within 60 days, my blood levels were almost approaching something looking like normal. And within a year, I was back to some of my regular kinds of activities, and I was even traveling. So it was quite a miraculous recovery, and I am eternally grateful to the macrobiotic diet.